I hope you enjoy these distinguished and honorable guest speakers. It is such a privilege to have. We begin with Lori Coleman, the co-founder and director of digital strategy at DemCast USA. We're also graced by Stuart, Gaffney, and John Lewis of Marriage Equality, their founders, who are local LGBTQIA royalty here in the Bay Area and in the Castro in San Francisco. They're among the first 10 LGBTQ Americans ever married in the United States. And are beloved local figures in the LGBTQIA community. They continue to be activists and have been so for many decades. They've taught me quite a lot and were gracious enough to give me a tour and a full history summary, no doubt. Last year with Jacquelyns Brittany from New York, our iconic everyday security guard for the New York Times. I hope personally that you enjoy these honored guest speakers. We begin, of course, with Lori Coleman, the co-founder and director of digital strategy. We're also graced by former combat veteran, retired, and Ohio Vets for Joe contributor Don Moss, speaking on his anniversary of all days, boasting to a service record with a master's in national security, speaking on immigration from his perspective, on national defense, and as an honorable veteran serving in Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He was awarded the Bronze Medal and is a graduate of the Naval Postgraduate Alumni and 2010 recipient of the Major General Jackie E. Thomas Award as the #1 United States intelligence professional. We're also joined by the grassroots everyday activists, Biden supporters since day one and DemCast supporters alike, Rena Korb, as well as beloved CA Biden delegate and social media rock star Analisa Swan, an activist advocate for LGBTQIA rights, civil rights for the people, and someone who was literally everywhere throughout the campaign. This video has been obviously edited down for brevity and quality control, but reflects the honest opinions of each guest as an everyday American. These are their words, not ours, not mine, and theirs alone. In this episode of The Road Ahead, we've chosen to focus primarily on what we and other supporters can do to control the national narrative, the Democratic Party brand, with state and regional marketing, addressing the social comments and concerns of red, pink, and swing states as a priority to combat misinformation, essentially from all sides, with so many wonderful and amazing people. I speak both as a professional and expert in my field and as an everyday American Joe, as I mentioned. I'm a father that often shares my own personal stories and how they relate to the time of national crisis and the promises and of restoration from the Biden administration in the Build Back Better plan, a better American future on the road ahead. And you can download literally terabytes of free supportographics and content from everydayamericanjoe.com. It's completely free for your use. You can do whatever you want with it, add your own hashtags, add your own flair. They're yours to do with as you wish. And as long as we're all working together to support the Biden-Harris administration and elect a stronger majority in the House and the Senate in 2022. I'm all for it, and I support it happily. With that, it's my great honor and privilege to introduce our first speaker for the night. So great to have you, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, I think there's a little bit more to you than that.
I'm in Ohio, 23-year combat vet. As Chris was saying, I ran Ohio Vets for Joe in 2020. And now I'm just an activist in the state veterans committee, as well as trying to organize regionally. So that's my stuff. That's where my spiel is.
Yeah, we've talked on LinkedIn, which is probably the platform that I use the least. And I know that, man, your resume, you're quite the qualified veteran. So I think you're, I think you're being too humble, too modest. But yeah, I know that you have an anniversary you're celebrating. Right?
In 54 minutes, whether you guys like it or not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
the screen will go black and I will disappear.
It's so important. I had a brief chance to celebrate mine yesterday and finally get out of the house. We've been quarantined for over a year, and I know that's not true in every state, but here we've actually done it. We've obeyed and we've stayed home for a year plus. So happy anniversary. Congratulations.
Thank you. Who else we got?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Lori Coleman. I'm a co-founder of DemCast. Hey, Analisa. With Nick Knudsen. Nick is going to be on, but he had a little bit of a delay. He had a death in his family and had to work on making some arrangements today. So, but I do believe he's planning on hopping on in a little while to join us. I'm the director of strategy for DemCast. If you're not familiar with us and our work, we're a 501c4 nonprofit. We've been around for about 2 years. And this is really on being the permanent infrastructure for the left. One thing that we really saw happening was that the right was dominating the narrative on social media. And then another big thrust of ours is, that's a tricky thing because the more you talk about it, the more people believe it. And so our focus is presenting and getting it out with a lot of individual voices all talking about the same truths instead of the falsehoods. So that's us.
That's exactly what I've been rooting for. It's what I've been trying to do myself for the past couple of years with everydayamericanjoe.com. I'm not, politics is not my profession. I'm a marketing strategist. I work in design and development, applications, websites, stuff like that, big database projects and branding. And so I agree with, I think 100% of everything I've seen come out of DemCast. That branding is really, really key because from my perspective, and I'm just one person, but from my perspective, the GOP has successfully branded us for the last 15 years and to the point where, for the last decade or so, I think that the average American, when they hear the word Democrat, the definition that pops up into their head is a definition that the GOP has given them. And that's on us. And I don't mean us as the voters, us as citizens. I mean us as a party. That I don't think that we've done a great job owning our own brand. So that what works in New York doesn't necessarily work in Florida. And that we have to be able to adjust. So it's thanks to DemCast and these coalitions and these broader outlooks, I think that we're able to do that. Do you guys have a national strategy for
Yes.
how to brand?
Oh, absolutely. We have both a state network and a national issues-based focus. And that's one thing that served us very well is that we have organized by state and grown our partners in each state. Particularly that showed up very well in Georgia during the runoffs last year. A lot of people were messaging things like, we can retire Mitch McConnell. The people in Georgia did not give a flip about that. They cared about COVID relief. They cared about getting a stimulus check. And another thing that just did not resonate with them at all, were unfortunately, was the crazy, basically insider trading stuff that went on with the two Republican candidates, where they were profiting off of knowing the coronavirus was coming and buying up stock. But again, everyday Georgians did not give a flip about COVID relief. They cared about COVID relief. And another thing that just did not resonate with them at all, were the crazy, basically insider trading stuff that went on with the two Republican candidates, where they were profiting off of knowing the coronavirus was coming and buying up stock. But again, everyday Georgians did not give a flip about that. They cared about the kitchen table issues they were struggling with. And so having partners on the ground, being able to say, this is what resonates, this is what we need to be talking about. The other piece of that is sometimes those messages that seem, viral, or we have viral videos on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, sometimes that actually has a bounce back effect where it sends people in the direction that we don't want them to go, or encourages a portion to vote for the guy we're against. And so we look strongly on our messaging to make sure that our messaging is tested. We have several partners that do a lot of testing to see what resonates and what moves people.
Yeah.
Even on those national issues.
That's great. And that's great feedback. What advice do you have for people who are campaigning online, digitally, on their own, grassroots, and, as we do in our Twitter chat rooms, or, what advice do you have for red states and pink states, swing states? Is there anything that you think is a definite no-no that we should not do? Is there anything you think there is a definite, we should do this as often as possible, specifically for swing states, that we need to maintain that majority?
Well, I think in swing states, it's really important to talk about what the Democrats are doing and how that helps them. We don't tell our story. We let the GOP explain to everybody else what they think we're doing, which, if you watch the glorious moment when Jen Psaki this week snapped down that Fox question about the Georgia voting law, that's what we need. We need people to say, this is what we believe in, and this is how it will make a difference for you. We believe in cutting hours. We don't think it's the right sort of thing to criminalize giving somebody water.
Sure.
And so, but in a way that's truth. It doesn't have to be hyper partisan. It doesn't have to be, over exaggerated, because we do a lot of great things. We just don't do it, getting the message out. Sometimes it's not sexy and exciting. What moves on social is emotional stuff, right? And for the past 4 years, we've been enraged. That's what we've used, is rage to fuel and indignation, and but you can also move people with personal stories, right? You can say, hey, we got the stimulus check and I was able to replace my car that was on its last leg, and now I can get a job because I have reliable transportation. If you weren't paying attention during Obama's presidency, I wasn't, because he seemed like a sane person that was in charge of our country. They struggled with it then. They had border camps then. And this is something that is not going to be fixed in 2 months when it's been broken for 20 years. So it is a pressure point, though. And I think what we need to be focused on is, what are the long-term solutions? And it's some short-term pain. And we've got to find a way to handle this situation. And of course, the Biden administration has proposed a sweeping immigration reform that would really fix a lot of these issues. And a lot of the things that Trump did, like Trump stopped giving aid to the Central American countries that would help them be safe and stable. One of the things that Obama's administration did was they funded streetlights in some of the Central American cities, because it was not safe to walk along for the kids, and because it was dark. It's not giving the country the money, because some of those countries would not use the money that we would, in a way that we would want them to. But they said, why can't you stay here? Why making it not safe? And then they invested in some things that would help people, citizens, feel safer in their own country and not feel like they have to flee. I think the humanity in himself said, imagine how bad it must be if you would send your minor child on this horrible trek to try to be safe. That's how bad it is. And then fighting the whole narrative about immigrants cause trouble and they're criminals, and Mexicans are rapists and all of that Trumpian bullshit, because the vast majority of migrants that are in our country are law-abiding, and they contribute to our country. And I would say the other thing I would say is watch the terms that you use. We should never talk about illegal immigrants. We should talk about people who are undocumented, you know, who are visiting or living or fleeing from persecution, right? You know, the right is all about they're being persecuted because they're Christian. Well, these people are fleeing persecution, and we're not going to close our door in their face, are we? I really enjoy turning around Republican talking points to argue back with them.
As a veteran, as someone experienced in the military, and with our national defense, who's been in service for this country, protecting us, let me just start with the obvious question. Are you afraid?
Of what? There's so many things, right? COVID and everything else. I was afraid when Trump was president. I'm not as afraid now. You know, it'd be funny, Lori, as you were talking, I was linking into you on Twitter. So there you have it. That's a great sell. Yeah, you're hitting all the right points there. But no, I was sitting on my couch as a double retired guy in the beginning of 2020, and I was deathly afraid that I was watching the end of my country that I served for 23 years. And I thought I honestly believe that if Trump had gotten reelected, we would be in the middle of an autocracy right now, and he would be making all the moves within the military and defense to make it where you probably never see a Democratic president again. And all of his jokes about, you know, running in 24 and 28 and 32, they're not jokes. And anybody who's followed Trump knows that he's forecasting his own future in his mind, and he would take every step he could to do that. And we would probably wander into a civil war, a full-up civil war. So I am not nearly as afraid now. What I am afraid of is lack of accountability, and that we will watch things just kind of fade into the past. January 6th should never fade into the past until there is full accountability. The kind of things he was doing with watchdogs and you know, government oversight, those things, and removing people, you know, those things should never fade. There should be full accountability. Will we ever get that? I don't know, but it should be one of those things where we have this moment in time where we can set a line in the sand for every future candidate and every future president that this shall not pass. You know, the whole Gandalf, you know, staff into the bridge thing, and making sure that people realize that forevermore, that there are certain things you can't get away with. We're watching this now with voting in Georgia. You know, we're having a lot of people stand up now, maybe a little too late sometimes, but you know, standing up and saying this is not right, and we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that we do not make this routine, and in making that you know, people of color have a more difficult time to vote in a democracy, you know, filled with immigrants. You know, it's based on immigrants. And so you're seeing that right now. And this whole friction period, 4, 6, 8 years, whatever it turns out to be, this may be down the road a really good thing for our country. And I think it will be, because we kind of stared over the cliff a little bit and we said, we don't want to go there. And I think what you're going to see is, I think 22 is going to, with the help of people like you and everything that everybody is doing, 22 is going to be different, where a lot of people, when they get a choice, you know, it's not going to be just sit at home. They're going to say, listen, I have an opportunity to vote, you know, for this individual who is against everything that happened between 16 and 20 and now in 21 with QAnon and people, you know, avoiding responsibility and gaslighting and, you know, Republican politicians who have no platform. It's only obstruction and to own the libs. That's their only platform. So I think if you get the message out, like all of you guys are talking about, and I can't wait to see who else is here. But, you know, I think that that's one of those things where we have this drive and this passion right now because of what we have seen, where we can make 22 very different, and we can gain in the House, we can gain in the Senate, and then just imagine what a guy like Joe could do, you know, with 2 years with even more support. I mean, these are things that would happen, and they would help everybody, just like he's trying to do with infrastructure and with COVID relief and everything else. And I think that alone would really put the Republicans back on their heels, you know, the GQP, if you will, the Republican Party as a whole, because they're not all completely insane, but it would put them back on their heels, and they would have to reinvent themselves and give us a party that we could look at and say, okay, what do you have to offer? And okay, here's what we have to offer besides, you know, lying and conspiracies.
I'd like to touch on a couple things there that really apply to Stuart, Lori, and Don. Everything that was just said. You know, Lori, you had mentioned the messenger, and you know, one of the things that I've noticed, and I think it's very smart for the Biden administration, is that he has been, I think it's strategic. He has chosen which things to, you know, make a big deal about, and which things to be, you know, to come out strongly as part of his own presidency, and which things to keep as a Democratic Party obligation, Democratic Party task. So things such as holding Trump accountable, the insurrection, things of that nature. I think that it's smart. I think that it's strategic, and I think it's the right move for him not to be the one calling every single day on TV saying, we've got to hold this guy accountable. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. I think that what he's doing is correct. In that, there used to be a friend of mine that would say, I'm from Missouri, the show me state. And I think that's what the American public really wants right now is show me something. In order to correct that narrative that the GOP has been pushing for so long, I think that we have to do more than just talk. We have to, have a clear-cut message that we show and demonstrate. So I think part of communication is showing what the difference is. When it comes to things like immigration, I think it's important for people that live along the border in border states to speak up. I think it's important for veterans like Don. Other veterans that are on the Trump side or the Republican side, I think they need to hear it from a veteran sometimes. That this is a combat war veteran, and he is telling you we are safe. You have nothing to fear, and we're okay. I think that kind of one-on-one, peer-to-peer, messaging is important. So it gets back to the personal stories that you guys were talking about. That when we offer up a little bit of that information, and we have something to show on it, I think it matters a lot more, and it speaks to people a lot more. What I noticed, I can tell you that my house just 2 weeks ago, and I live in California. Just 2 weeks ago, my wife was in the front yard, and we have an American flag in the in the front. I took down the Biden sign right after he was inaugurated. I had to wait until the inauguration, but I have a bumper sticker. Of course, I've got two, and that's it. That's all, and it's very hard to see. And someone circled around our court in a tiny little pickup with an upside down flag, and he screamed at my wife, "Take down that effing flag, or I'll do it for you." In the Bay Area, in California, the bluest place in the entire country, we've got this crazy guy that's, threatening, a woman alone in broad daylight. And they see themselves as the patriots. So where I'm going with this is I think that it's important for us to make a big deal out of things like the 4th of July and make a big deal about our veterans and, do the things that, go to the Vietnam Memorial and retake the fact that, we are patriots. We love our country. We respect our Constitution. We respect, I wish people would read the Declaration of Independence. Honestly, if they read that and swapped King George's name for Trump, it's eerie how similar they are. But what I have found in this trek, 2+ years, is that the simple message that seems to work best nationally on a broad scale is that I'm a Democrat. I stand for an economy from the bottom up, from the least of these up, where when everyday people thrive, businesses, small and large, everyone else thrives. Because when we can pay our bills, when we can afford to pay our debts, when we can buy things, when we can make a living, all those businesses are going to thrive anyway. So we believe in an economy from the bottom up and freedom, equality, equity for the people. I think that's a simple enough message. And we might even be able to simplify it even further, but for the people and our rights and an economy from the bottom up. So I'd like to see Stuart and John, I think you're itching to say something here. Am I right?
Oh, we were just having little brief conversation about your wise insights. But we're happy to share some more from our experience, in LGBT politics and grassroots sort of things. And we also we connected everybody's messages and really appreciate how much is shared just from these 9 people on the call. We haven't heard from everybody, so I think maybe we could just, underscore how much as grassroots. So we just really quickly, our background too, that we've actually been involved in grassroots activism in many different ways since high school in the 70s. But in the LGBT work since the mid 80s. First with, Stuart participated in the shutdown of the United States Supreme Court in protest of the decision upholding that you could criminalize being gay in the United States. And we were involved in a lot of HIV/AIDS activism in the 80s. And then since 2004 in marriage equality work, which we very much see as part of a broader work for not only LGBT equality, but equality for everybody. And we did it through grassroots organization, Marriage Equality USA. And I was the legal director, and Stuart was the media director. And just to underscore, I think what many of us in the grassroots felt was that what was missing and what caused some of the struggle of it was the lack of force and lack of directness that some of the professionals, if you will, the political class thought they needed to do. And if you might remember, Obama reversed his support for marriage equality, and it was a horrifying day when we opened our mailbox here in San Francisco and saw a flyer put out by, I'm just going to say sadly, African-American organization that was based in church. And they used Obama's quotes he had made to try to appeal to the middle that said, I don't believe in gay marriage or something. And he was reversing what he had originally said, and it was being used as a tool to try to get Prop 8 passed, which took away the right to marry in California. So it was a flyer against Prop 8, and they were using Obama's popularity, of course, in California, specifically with African-American voters, to turn people to vote against LGBT rights. And that and part of it was he just couldn't just sit down and say, honestly, he finally did, right? But who was the person that forced it? It was Joe Biden. Because Biden just, if you recall, he just said, I'm in favor of marriage equality. And then he jumped the gun and forced Obama. Yep. But that is that directness, there were 37 campaigns to take away rights from gay people during 2004 to 2008. And John Kerry refused to support gay marriage. He was so scared of it in 2004. The people within the LGBT community said our message needs to be, the powers that be, the non-grassroots people, they said, oh, no, we can't say, talk about love, talk about commitment. They said, oh, no, you say, you don't want to take anybody's rights away, do you? Discrimination is wrong. It was like, well, what are we even talking about? And so finally, when we got to the heart. And just as, Lori, I think you articulated particularly, but I think everyone in the call, when you really say, we're going to own this, we're going to own it, and we're going to connect. And that's what our work was as part of the lawsuit, was we saw our main voice that we could do our best work at was trying to connect with people who didn't maybe get it yet, and be human and being a connector. And there are, we believe, many voices and many different approaches, and you have to find where you fit in. And again, just to underscore the value of finding that connection, it was studied back in 2005. We were lobbying in California legislature for a marriage equality bill. And we were meeting with this Republican legislator, and we told our story of getting married in 2004 and then having it taken away from us. But as soon as we said we got married in February 2004, he said, congratulations. Just instinctively, he said, congratulations. And he was against us, but he couldn't, he immediately found connection there. And so that connection with where we can connect is really powerful in finding those ways to show that we have a common humanity, and to do it and own it and love it and be strong. That was a lesson we took, and try to just continue from it.
It's easy to say things from behind to keep the safety of a keyboard, but it's very difficult to look someone in the eye and tell them that they're not your equal, or they're less than you, or they're not entitled to the same rights as you are. Human rights campaign, yeah, and big bold Black Lives Matter all the way, huge banners all through the Castro, and you guys would point out, all these stone tablets of these icons, these people that had contributed and sacrificed so many different things to protect the rights. Every step was integral. It was small, and just like Lori said, it wasn't sexy. It wasn't, these were very small little pieces that led one thing to another, to another, to another. Yeah.
Thank you very much for all those insights and words, and also I guess it was interesting as you were talking too. I was just curious, maybe Don could talk a little bit more too, that about, I recently heard an interview with Tammy Duckworth with her new book, and she spoke pretty personally on that interview about what all of she's gone through, and then just a broader reflection too of different. There are many different attitudes toward the wars of the last 50 years in the United States. And just very quickly, a dear friend of mine who works in a very lefty office in California, her son joined the Marines, and she just had a really hard time. She supported him, even though she is a pacifist person, but her colleagues they wouldn't go there. The idea of her child being a Marine. And so the public impression of the military has changed dramatically since it was in the 60s in the war in Vietnam. But there's some interesting questions of messaging. We saw this in the LGBT community back in the 90s with the don't ask, don't tell policy. And it still is a lingering issue sort of. And so I wonder if you just wanted to comment on either of those or any of that comes to mind.
And if I could just say, Don, after you comment that Jackie very patiently had her hand raised. So.
Sorry.
And I'm trying to figure out how Jackie has smiled for 47 consecutive minutes. So
we are loving it.
Say something. I want to hear this more than anything.
Hi. From sunny Minnesota and my bike ride. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm hearing a lot of wonderful Wellstone from you all. And I just want to remind you that Wellstone was considered, Paul Wellstone from Minnesota was considered extremely progressive. Like folks looked at him, oh, he's crazy. But everything you're talking about is what he put forward, all the progressive values. I'm going to mention that the Overton window is important. And the progressives, as an obnoxious lefty, really do pull that Overton window to the left. And we may not expect to get everything we want. We really don't, because we know we're not stupid. But the obnoxious lefties that come at you and say, hey, we got to fight for this. It's because we know pulling the Overton window to the left makes the center more accepting and more willing to change. And that's a Wellstone message. And I think it's beautiful. And we have it all over here. And so remember, as we look for solutions, and some of the leftists, you just shake your head sometimes, my gosh, they're being so stubborn. They're pulling that Overton window to the left where we can make some change. It may not be the change they want or the change they expect, but it is absolutely helping us all. So that's what I wanted to say. And I think this is all wonderful, very Wellstonian, and it brings me joy. That's why I'm always smiling. And plus I'm a smiler, and that's how I roll. And you're all making so much sense. Well, I'm in Minnesota. I grew up in Wisconsin, so I'm actually nice. In Minnesota, it's passive aggressive.
Well, I'm nice. Originally Wisconsin also, and Illinois, Missouri.
I'm a show me person.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
If I could actually just follow on one thing you said, Jackie, and then it also echoes something Chris was saying about the incremental versus asking for it all, which I think is also what you were speaking to, Jackie. But something we really felt we needed to do was work for incremental change while saying we want it all. Because by saying we want it all, that's how we were going to get incremental change. If we said we want incremental change, we were going to get nothing. So when domestic partnerships evolved, our message was like, this is separate and unequal, which is correct. We also registered as domestic partners because we wanted to have hospital visitation. I wanted to be able to add John to my insurance policy, all the practical benefits that came with that separate and unequal status, while we said it's not enough, we need it all. So I just wanted to echo all those things. And then I want to say, Don, you've been patiently waiting now.
No, I want to hear from everybody, because I still don't know like 3 or 4 people on this call, even what they do. And I'm rolling in 9 minutes. Remember, the screen goes black. I have to do it.
No, but, I'm trying to hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the military. So the military, if you're far left and complete pacifist, which I completely understand, then the need for the military and the use of the military is like, well, what are we doing? This goes against it. And I would love to say that we were in a world now where we didn't need militaries. We didn't need guns. We were at that point. Unfortunately, the realism isn't there yet. My son just signed up. He's 3rd generation Air Force now. My nephew's in. He's a combat infantryman, and there's still that need for, in my opinion, for an institution to protect America from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we saw that in 2020. We saw the military stand up against a domestic enemy. It wasn't labeled like that, but when they came out and all of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and everyone else said the military will not be involved in politics, that was a message to Trump. And they completely told him, said, you can want to coup as, every day, but it won't happen on our watch. Now, with 4 more years replacing people, he may have found more folks like Flynn, and he could have done what he wanted and gone down through. Now, I think they still would have run into an issue with the middle ranks and the lower ranks where, like, yeah, that's an unconstitutional order. We're not going to do that if they had tried to roll that way. And that's where the Civil War would have come in. But it is having the presence of an institution like the military, which allows, in my opinion, people to protest, which allows, the National Guard and the prop washing of protesters, during, Upside Down Bible Day. That is something that is still getting investigated, taken care of. And the military said they were not going to be a part of that. And Miley said that was an embarrassment. I shouldn't have even been out there, doing that. And I think we need those forces like that to say, listen, we're crossing a red line against our Constitution, and we're not going to do that. So if you're going to try to coup, do it without the military, and good luck, because in history that doesn't work. So, yeah.
A final question before you set off on a well-deserved anniversary date here. I have a foster brother who's active military for 22 years. I can't tell you where he's stationed right now, but he's done 2 tours in Korea. He's done 2 tours in Afghanistan, 2 tours in Iraq, and 2 tours in Germany, which was a vacation compared to the rest. He is a decorated officer. And I have another foster brother who did 2 tours in Iraq as well. And then my grandfather, who fought in World War II Japan. I had someone online that had mentioned kind of this all or nothing thing that, I had mentioned, the need with Biden's defense, first his Secretary of Defense pick, which is, historic, but the need for NATO and the need for these alliances and the need for a strong defense, that I think that there is a need to flex a little on his part, because we've had this strongman, bravado for these last few years. In some of these states, especially red states and pink states, they may need to see a little bit of this instead of the traditional thumb, because of threats like China, Russia, and North Korea. The combination, that trinity right there, it's a threat. So I'm someone who I guess would be considered a moderate in that area, in that I don't think that we can afford, this is just me, my opinion. I don't think that we can afford to cut our defense spending. But at the same time, I think we can absolutely afford to do everything else that we need to do. I think that we can do both. I don't think that it's an all or nothing thing. I think that we can protect our country, and that we can build back better, put through this legislation to create all these jobs, get people health care, get people back to work, rebuild the country. And I think that it's not a one or the other. I think that it's something where we can do the whole thing, and we can president the whole job. And I think that he's the one to do it. I think that he can do it. And I don't think they're conflicting ideas. That doesn't necessarily mean that we want forever wars. Democrats probably should have a clearer message on forever wars, and exactly what we mean by how do we get out of forever wars. But I do think that some of those red and pink states, especially, they really want to hear that all the stuff that Fox News has been scaring them with. We've got a strong America. We're going to be protected by folks like you and my brothers.
I've got 4 minutes to try to hit this and John and Stuart's question, which I still haven't forgotten about. So one of the games that Trump was playing is that Joe was a China puppet, and we were going to roll over, and we were going to become a region of China like the next day, right? So Joe is, with a lot of other things he's done so far, has been very smart to stand up to China and put them on notice right away and say, I don't care what he said. This is the way it was under Obama. This is the way it is now. Like, we're going to stand up to China as an economic threat. And that's the biggest thing right now, is their economic threat. But it's also a regional threat, because they have taken advantage of the spaces that we left behind under Trump. When we abandoned allies and we didn't stand up to certain things China was doing, China said, thank you very much. We're going to leap right in there. We're going to go ahead and offer more service and support to these countries, and we're going to take over some of the advantage that you had there. And so he's got a lot of work to do in China, and he completely realizes that. Now, that goes against the narrative that Trump was building. But again, that's an entirely different subject, because you have 20% of America who, it doesn't matter if Trump said today it's black and tomorrow it's white, they would believe both days. That's the 20%, and you can't fix them. It's the middle that we're talking about right now, where common sense says, well, he was supposed to be a China puppet, and now he's keeping tariffs. and he's pushing back, on the Uyghurs and all of these other things, and he's standing up for us and, developing a task force. And he's putting Putin on notice for the first time in 4 years that you need to get your thumb out of our pie, which Trump never did on multiple things. And so I think that is going to filter through the middle, which is what we have to address if we want to win, is the middle. You can write off the 20% right now. At some point, they will start to fade out of that because they will realize they were ahead and they were scammed, in so many different ways. But you can't force that. It's the people in the middle that are going to win future elections. Now, when we talk about, John Stewart, your question, the cool thing about the military is it's a melting pot. I mean, it is this huge melting pot of everybody. And the great thing about, lifting, the transgender ban, and then Joe doing it again, recently, was we are supposed to be an inclusive, diverse force. Okay. There is nothing in the oath I took for 23 years that said, I'm only going to defend the straight white guy. Like, it never said that. It always said, America and the Constitution and everybody underneath it. And so you have a small fraction of people inside the military, just like any organization, who are going to be, have their own frame of mind, and they're going to be weeded out. And it's going to be pushed along, and the military is going to move forward. And they're having issues with, and they've always had some issues with, sexual assault and things like that. And they're also usually the quickest to hammer it and go down and say, this is not what we want, and this is not what we're going to be part of. And we still have work to do there. Any organization does, they still do. But the organization my son joined, the United States military, they are constantly striving to be better and to be more equal and to allow people to succeed on their own, regardless of color, race, sexual preference, religion, anything. And so I think that right now in the world that we've got, in the United States, we need the military. I think it is overwhelmingly a great organization filled with, quality people who are going to take care of each other regardless of who they are, because they're both doing the same thing and raising their hand to fight for their country. And with that, I love all of you guys. I didn't get a chance to listen to a couple of you. It is 6 o'clock and I have to go. I'm a military man. I've got a bolt. I would love to talk to all of you in the future. Please find me on LinkedIn or something. I honestly would like to talk to you guys, but I got to go. Okay.
Happy anniversary.
Congratulations.
All right. Thank you guys. We'll see you. Have a great night. Thanks for what you're doing.
Lori, I know you had your hand up for a quick second, and then I think he touched on it, but I'm gonna call on you in just 1 second. Analisa, you've been patiently waiting in the corner, and I know you're so happy to wait, but we'd love to hear from you.
Just to sort of echo what some of the people have said, I think our messaging is really important, that we get across positive messages, especially for the American Rescue Plan and the COVID-19 plan. I've been participating in the Best Practices Institute through the DNC, and it's like a 12-week program, 1 hour on Tuesday, 1 hour on Thursday, and they go through all the different kind of messaging and organizational skills for campaigns. We just did like one for Twitter, and it was really to emphasize positive things and to use our unique voice to tell a story. Like if it looks sort of manufactured, it won't be processed as well online. So we just want to be like very authentic in our voices. I'm not very good about this. I use a bunch of hashtags and they said, do not do that. Like use just 1 or 2 hashtags. So I just kind of figured that's like something I can work on for my messaging to help promote democratic campaigns and democratic issues.
There's competing ideas on that. I'm sure DemCast has, the lead here on the best, most qualified advice for politics, where marketing, SEO, hashtags, technology, where that stuff comes in. This is one of my fields of expertise. I disagree. I think that maybe I can explain it in terms of advertising. So essentially what we're doing every time that we send out a tweet or we post to Instagram or Facebook or anything public that you're using as your platform to speak to people, blog, whatever it is. Anytime we're posting these things, yes, I can see the value in some of those hashtags being consistent so that they gain score, they gain ranking, they gain credibility. That's very important. However, jumping on the trending topics, jumping on the trending hashtags is, to me, more vital because of the fact that it breaks beyond the echo chamber. That is one of the only times that people who don't agree with us will see us. This thing happens, and I think it's not something that everyone wants to hear, but I think that, which is very human, there's an inflated sense of accomplishment and an inflated sense of worth in a lot of the things that we do. It's a hard pill to swallow, for anyone to say, my contributions, they're minor. For me, I put in almost $1 million worth of billable hours for free over the last 2 years. And almost completely I'm on unemployment. My wife is on unemployment. We're hanging from a thread. And I own a design firm that charges $250 an hour. And we were, about to lose our house, about to lose everything. I mean, if Biden had not been elected, we would have lost this house, point blank. Without the stimulus, without the unemployment, the pandemic unemployment, which normally I would not be eligible for because I have a business. Without that, we would not be here. And my 3 children and my wife and our 2 dogs, we might even be trying to make an apartment work, or the in-laws, or who knows what. So I think that we have to watch, and I'm sure Lori is going to, expand on, this with a plethora of knowledge. But I think that we have to watch out for too much patting on the back. Yeah, we did it. We really did. And a lot of people deserve so much credit for all the sacrifices. They'll probably never get it. Biden will never get the credit that he really deserves. Kamala won't get the credit that she really deserves. The supporters, no one is ever really going to get the credit that they deserve. But I think that myself, the number one thing that I can offer as someone who is an expert in marketing and digital advertising specifically, not necessarily politics, is we have to be careful and watch out for these echo chambers where we're cycling through people who already agree with us. And what happens when we do these hashtag groups is it's just the same people. We're talking to people who already agree. So getting out of that, jumping on a trending hashtag, any way to break out of it, my professional advice would be hop on it and engage, get it out there, break through any way that you can. Go ahead, Analisa.
Yeah, that's great advice, and that's like exactly what they said, that you have to ride those trends. And they also, I think, said something like 16% of voters are on Twitter, but Twitter is really effective because you're dealing one-on-one with electeds and social media influencers and like journalists, like people like that you can influence. So it's very easy to have contact with like higher influential people on Twitter, but like 47% of the voters are on Facebook. So they said you really have to be doing both of them. And, they said like one of the best ways to do it is just to kind of tell your personal story, because of, people trust people that they know, even if you're not an expert. So if to hear it filtered through your mouth is kind of like a great way to build your network. Like that was back in 2013. And I've done so many protests and marches that I've literally lost count. So yeah, I guess it starts that way, right? Like grassroots activism is kind of like the gateway drug to all the other higher levels of political action.
Well, you've just further proven Lori's point. You're not just a grassroots activist. You are the movement.
I think of myself as just a grassroots activist. Like I try to do what I can, but I know there's like you and your husband have done so much more. Like, I'm just kind of just out there. I'm just trying to do whatever I can. I'm just a person, but one person can help do good things and help other people and help build that energy that we need.
We're all boxes on Zoom right now, so we are actually equal to you.
Well, and I think, though, just your vocabulary is pointing to a really important point. And one, we are involved. We got involved and became part of the lawsuit, had a higher media presence because we went to a rally as a grassroots person. It was a marriage equality rally on the steps of City Hall, February 12th, 2004. And it happened to be the first hour that they do some up in the door, a couple get married. Awesome. We had no idea that was happening. So we just bounded in there and got married.
So it turned out to be our wedding day.
Wow.
But we saw constantly throughout it that the moneyed interests kept denigrating the grassroots interests. And they would say, well, you got your super volunteers, and those are the people who will do, like Chris was saying, $1 million worth of work, and they're not getting paid. But it was a tool to exert their influence.
Like we need that, absolutely. And I think that, like your actions for marriage equality, like you started it from the grassroots up to build it so that it's a position that the higher up political spectrum wants to be associated with. Thank you so much for changing history.
Well, and what they're not telling you is that they are among the first 10 ever married in the United States of America. So there's one key point that they've left out. This is essential royalty we have here.
This is why we pay you the big bucks, Chris.
Yeah.
But I think that, like what you were just saying, Analisa, about really the movement filtering upwards from the grassroots up, if we even want to use that directionality. It really goes back to our kind of where we began this conversation with the importance of the personal stories.
Yeah.
And what we always found was that when our issue was abstracted, like 2 words, protect marriage, like that was a hashtag against us. But what does that even mean, right? People have an idea what they think it means, but it's completely abstract. When we could make the story personal, it was just about the 2 of us wanting to celebrate our happily ever after. Suddenly, hearts open.
It becomes personalized and real.
Yeah, and so I think that's another way of saying, you could say that's a grassroots story, right? But you could also just say it's a real human story. Our LGBTQ plus rainbow, we actually are everybody. So when people would say, oh, it's like you guys against people of faith, we'd say, no, we are people of faith. Or it's like you guys against, this racial ethnic group. We say, no, we are that ethnic group. So, and we had the appropriate messengers, and also even to parts of our own community that weren't as fully supportive, we had those messengers. So we had Latinos for equality, we had API equality, we had transgender equality, veterans for equality, so that people never felt like, oh, you're telling our church what to do. We said, no, here's a minister who'll tell you what he does in his own church to support equality for all of his congregation. And that was how we really kept it feeling real and appropriate.
Thank you for hosting this, Chris. I mean, I think one of the things where we really outwork the Republicans is we have relational organizing where we are actual unpaid activists, most of us. Like the GOP is so astroturf, like paid people to sort of manufacture a fake grassroots, and we are the real thing. And what we need to do is we need to be organizing across all of these activist groups and putting out a unified message for Biden-Harris.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
And for progressive values too.
Well, and I love the way that you phrased that too. So you said something that was very, very clever, and I love it. You mentioned, I'm a Californian. I'm right here in the Bay Area. Most of you guys that know me, I grew up in a very rough neighborhood, Reagan era. I
think you should write a screenplay, Chris. Honestly, you're like so articulate, and you have such a great story.
I talk too much, believe me.
And you've experienced so much. You should totally write the screenplay for it.
I have, but the world is not more cishet white men telling why they're important and why their story be told. I'll get there.
And Stuart and John too. I would totally love. You probably do have documentaries made, actually.
Getting back to the clever compliment. You strategically said in California, M4A. You did not say Florida. You said California. And I'd like to highlight that because this is something that I agree. And I think that was very smart. That the feedback and the data that I've gotten, and again, I've reached 40 million people. I have some data. The feedback that I've got from the South and Florida, which is its own entire thing that I learned about over these 2 years. It's its own entity. That is one of those things that I would never use the term. I would never use the term in Florida at this moment in time because of the scare tactics from the GOP and the Republicans and the conservatives. And it isn't that, I believe, the Biden-Harris healthcare plan is, the end all and will be, the healthcare plan for the next 100 years. That's not the point. The point is that I think that the Biden-Harris health plan will sell better and will be more palatable to people in Florida than something like M4A, where you can easily in Berkeley in California, San Francisco, New York, you could swipe that through in a hot second. Not in Alabama, not in Georgia, not in Florida. That's what Reverend Daughtry was trying to say when she was saying that the national brand has to also account for regional cultures and differences, that they're not in the same place with their concerns, like what Lori was talking about, where Georgia, they're in my boat where I care about the economy. I'm watching people die in the streets in Oakland. We have tents. There are hundreds and thousands of people on the street that shouldn't be there, and it hasn't been this way since Reagan. It has not been this way. We suffered through 12 years of Republican presidents. Trump did it the same amount of damage in just 4 years. We're right back in the same spot with as significant, maybe even worse damage than it took Reagan and Senior Bush, over their 12 years of dominating this country. And I'm afraid that if we lose the midterms. It will weaken us to a lame duck presidency where we won't have the ability or that we do now to get the opportunity to take hold of that message, own it, and get in front and create our own narrative and tell people who a Democrat is, what a Democrat is, and follow that same thing. You know, what Trump's doing isn't new. Say it 3 times, say it over and over and over again, and it'll stick. That's not a new tactic. If we hammer the same message over and over and over and over again, and Democrats are for the people, and we're for an economy from the ground up, we keep it simple. I think that we can really seize this opportunity, but it is a hanging by a thread, and we should be acutely aware of that in those swing states. I see 2 hands up. Before we have Lori close us out, Rena, you haven't even been introduced. You've been part of our groups for an equal amount of time, 2 years and running. What would you like to say, please?
I'm Rena. I am Rena Korb, and I have the pleasure of working with DemCast. I am the content, one of the content directors over there at the DemCast USA, our website. So I mostly just been like taking notes about all the things that people have been saying, because it helps us craft our message. A lot of times, you know, we publish what people give us, but we also we're trying to get more writers so we can control the message and put it out there, as opposed to following what's going on. And I heard lots of great stories, and anybody who wants to contribute to DemCast USA, just please get in touch with me, because.
How do they do that? Is there a, please plug your.
Let's see, there's no chat, but you can email us at, there's no chat in here. Editorial at DemCastUSA.com.
Website? Yeah.
DemCastUSA.com. Actually, and if you go to DemCastUSA.com, you can follow some links and find us, because we love sharing lots of stories and lots of perspectives. And you know, I know like Analisa through DemCast, I know she's a great writer, but probably doesn't have time for that, because I
have not had the time.
I know. She writes.
I feel bad.
No, of course.
My day job is that I'm an attorney. I
don't know how you
workers for California workers' compensation, and I literally my schedule has been like working 7:30 in the morning to like 7:30 or 8+ at night, plus like tons of Zooms, because I'm in now so many groups and things. Like the evening is Zoom, and the weekend is a lot of Zoom.
Annalisa, I'm always like, how do you get work? Because I know that you have a job like. This is sort of my job. So,
you know, the things overlap though, because I'm very involved in the labor movement, representing injured workers, like people a lot of times in the hardest time of their life. So, you know, like what I do as an activist kind of on my own time, like overlaps also with being a good advocate for people who are injured and for workers.
It was, you could call me the leader of the fight for that now here locally, because I knew how to do it from what I had learned prior to joining DemCast. I've always done stuff like go to rallies, and
you guys have definitely sold me on it. I'm going to sign up and follow right on along. You know, it's personal for me. 2 things that I can contribute to that conversation from both Analisa and from yourself, Rena. You know, I'm a father of 3. For many years, I raised them myself. It's uncommon, but it happens. I related to Joe from day one because of that fact. And I know what it is to be a single father raising infants. It's very difficult to date, let alone, you know, find a spouse. So I've been very blessed and very fortunate with that. As of right now, our schools are going to be closed for the end of the year. I'm not happy about it. I actually am, again, because I'm always the thorn in everyone's side. I'm actually pushing that as soon as we're vaccinated, we open the school distanced, like we did at the Coliseum last night. You know, I had the good fortune I got to go out to an A's game, go to a baseball game, which is what my wife and I how we met, and everything was so well done. You know, bravo to them, who, by the way, were the first to have a Pride Day of any MLB organization. They were the very first. And if people don't know the history behind that, they're now on the Nationals, but the Doolittles, there was a lot of heat that the A's took for having a Pride Day, even here in the Bay Area. And I feel like I'm saying that often, even here in the Bay Area. And so what they did is they bought 20,000 tickets and they gave them away to any LGBTQIA or any fan that wanted to come and see a baseball game for free. That was their way of, you know what, you guys are gonna do, we're gonna buy 20,000 tickets. Come on, you're all welcome. You're all, welcome to come join us. And they yet again did another great job of making sure that everyone was safe, socially distanced, everyone was sanitized, everyone was wearing masks. It was a great sight to see that they were treating it that seriously and being so careful. And in addition to that, we have that the fact that the MLB has, and they have plenty of faults. I'm not saying they don't. They are not holding the All-Star game in Georgia. That's one of the most conservative sports there is. And maybe hockey. Hockey might be the only thing even further, conservative than baseball. Baseball is one of the most conservative sports there is. And for them to be joining, like we saw last year, hand in hand with the Black Lives Matter movement on almost every field in the country, and now saying, flat out, we're not going to support this. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act is long overdue. It is a shame and a disgrace that it hasn't already been passed. Every day that it goes by is an injustice without being law. And for them to do that, hats off, absolutely. So that smile, I love it so much. Joanne, is there anything that you would like to say over there before we close out here with Lori?
Sure, briefly. I'm Joanne, also with DemCast. I'm the lead copy editor there. So I will reiterate just basically everything Rena says. We work really closely together. If any of you are writers or no writers and are interested in sending us content, we would welcome that. And we're happy to edit it and publish it. And
our hearts go out to Nick, by the way.
I'm sorry. And then I was just going to say, and then, put it in through our social media crew and amplify it.
I can help with that. So Lori, again, we understand why Nick couldn't be here today. Please send him all our condolences. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that. A lot of people have lost a lot of people. I lost a cousin in December. In January of 2020, my little cousin signed up and became a Marine. And his mother, Analisa, is an immigration defense attorney. She's a diehard Democrat. And she was very worried for her son and for his safety under Trump. And he made it from January to December. And he was 18 years old when he passed away. A lot of people have lost a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. There have been tragedies of all kinds. We're seeing people killed for the color of their skin. We're seeing people killed for who they love. We're seeing people being excluded from the vote because it doesn't favor a political party. It's wrong. It's devious. It's deplorable. They belong in that basket. She was right. We're not going to say it. We're not going to use that messaging, but it's such an injustice that people like us, everyday, regular Joes, Janes, and Jacquelyns, have had enough to a point where we're willing to dedicate 2 years of our lives and drive our own businesses into the ground because it's that important. And I think, Stuart and John, I mentioned, that they were our hosts when Jacqueline Brittany, icon from the New York Times, our beloved security guard and icon, when she came out to California to come see me and come meet with John and Stuart. To me, the moment that I met her, I called her the day after that happened. I was the first. I was right on it. And from the moment that I saw and heard, I'm like, man, this is America. She is America. She is the everyday American. And that's what this is all about. And the reason that I was so passionate about it is because they never give, and we're talking about mainstream media here, and we talk about the GOP, here we have people, real people, authentic, genuine people with the Democrats. With the GOP, it's all suits and ties and people who are plastic, right? They're all just regurgitating the same stuff. We have sincerity and authenticity. And that's exactly what Jacqueline is a symbol of, is the authentic American. This is who America is today. And you would like, in a lot of these areas, they'd like to look back at, Leave It to Beaver and all these mid-century things that it was a fantasy then. That's not America. she's America. And so, I think that all leads right back to, following the example that just won in a landslide, a historic landslide that is larger than any win in the history of the United States of America. The winning ticket ran on character, and it ran on being an everyday American, which I think Joe represents very well. Lori, please take us out. Give us whatever advice that you have, and thank you again so much for doing this. We appreciate having you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I mean, I'm just one of the everyday people. I live in Tennessee. I'm a care professional, day job, and but I still want to stay engaged, involved. And I think what we saw, when you approached Nick, and then I horned in on this chat, but it was about the way forward. And I think we have to realize that so much of our democracy is built, not outlined in the Constitution and not legislated. It's norms, it's behavioral norms. When you become a legislator, you don't do things for your own profit because that's bad. Okay, there's not a lot of the things that we saw that we felt like were corrupt under the Trump administration. We're actually not against the law. And I think as we look going forward, we're going to have to put some protections in place to make sure that we do legislate some of those things. If you look at the For the People Act, it's more than just voting. It's about keeping foreign money out of our elections. It's about giving transparency. It requires that the Supreme Court has an ethics rule. That's the only court in the land that does not have its own set of ethical standards that they're supposed to follow. So that the For the People Act it's really the cornerstone of moving us forward and putting a lot of these norms really in a place so we can keep our democracy. And we were so close to losing it. I don't think we would have withstood another 4 years, to be honest. That we're not over the finish line, close. We're on the edge of a cliff, and we just didn't fall off of it last year. And we have to put a big barrier up now to protect ourselves. So we have to stay engaged. That's my nugget.
Yeah, I know. Analisa, I see you. We're so over time here. Briefly, go for it.
That's okay. I was just going to say, I think we have to be hopeful, and we have to be actively talking about good things that we're doing, that we're going to expand our majorities in 2022, because Reverend Warnock, he's up in 2022. And so we tell people about what they're doing for them. We tell our personal stories about how Democrats are helping in our day-to-day lives. I think, people respond to positive messaging, in a way that maybe they don't even to negative messaging. We need though to have things to point to with getting our legislative agenda passed. Joe Biden has done more in these last 72 days than any president since FDR. And it's important that we let people know that.
Totally agree with you.
And, I think it wasn't just COVID. I think it was the hope of possibilities. People had hope again. We had Kamala Harris, the first Black, first South Asian American woman in the White House. We had the promise of a Black Supreme Court justice, which is in play now with this new nomination that's coming to the DC court, because that's sort of like a stepping stone from the DC court to the Supreme Court. And I'm drawing a blank on the name, but a Black woman is up to be nominated to fill the DC appellate circuit. So I think we have a lot to be hopeful for. And I think we need to be positive in our messaging, and that we don't want to go back. We don't want more Trump. Look at all we need to fix. Look at all we need to do. Look at what happened. So
I completely agree with you. I think, the Republicans politic on fear, and we politic hope. And I think that is absolutely right. The message is that we are changing things for people. Our motivation is also to change things for people, but also to put
and to show a sharp contrast between them. They're the Matt Gaetzes, they're the sex traffickers, they're the insurrectionists. They're, we draw a sharp contrast between us and them, so people don't start to think both parties are the same. I hate it when people say that.
That's the one thing, and we are out of time here, unfortunately.
We're out of time. Sorry.
I think that there's actually three things that I think that won this election, and COVID is one of them, and that had a domino effect. So the domino effect that it had is that it forced the Biden for President campaign. This is before Biden-Harris. The Biden for President campaign, which I mentioned I was a part of. They were so old school. They were giving us brochures that looked like they were made in 2002. They were awful. It was horrible print material that look like an ad for a retirement home. And they had like 18 pictures of Joe Biden's face all over the front of them. And they were like monochromatic. It looked like either a funeral or a retirement home. It was very depressing, very badly done. It would have passed in 2002. But this is 20 years later. It was very, very bad. And coming from, Obama, who, Heffler and Co., they created Gotham, which is an iconic font that has stood the test of time. The Democratic logo is still using it. 15 years ago, that's how iconic Gotham is. I cannot tell you, I've had over 500 clients in my business. Gotham is the, holy grail of requested fonts in the typography world. And it was made by Heffler & Co., who was the second company, the second firm that came in and created this new Biden-Harris brand. The first was Teal, who I also worked with. So I worked with both Teal and Heffler & Co. and had to transition with that branding myself. It forced the Biden for President old guard into a completely digital campaign, which, in my opinion, laid the groundwork for future campaigns. I think that what we just saw from this old guy, this, this Irish squinty, old time chap, he just mopped the floor with the future campaign platform, which is digital. And it's never been done before. And if it hadn't been for that, I think they would have kept doing what they were doing. And I say that because I have argued with state directors. We can't do that. We can't do that. That's awful. Please don't do that. I begged them. And they could not be, persuaded otherwise. And what forced them was COVID, because canvassing became impossible, postcard practically impossible, depending on where you were. They had to go digital. And so that's one of the reasons that we want it. And the second is everything that you guys have been saying, which is sincerity and authenticity, that this is the party of genuine people. Joe did not try to make this about himself. He did not try to make it about one man. It showed a polar opposite that became so apparent when you saw the two of them on stage. And all of the messaging and, progressives, please don't be offended when I say this, we had to fight very hard to get Joe. We had to fight a campaign that outraised us 300 to 1. They had so much money in the Bernie camp. They had students on every campus. They were everywhere. They had rallies, mega rallies, just like Trump. I mean, it was an enormous Goliath going up against Bernie, who had essentially been campaigning for 5 years. And we had a piddly $54 million and two people. it was near impossible. So, what broke through was digital and the fact that he ran on just being an everyday Joe who is going to appoint the best people for the job. It's not about my ego. It's not about, this, it's not about that. We want the best people and we're going to correct these errors. We're going to right these wrongs. And here it is, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the steps we're going to take and I'm going to do it. And he's doing it. He's keeping his word. And as long as he keeps doing that, as long as he appears strong for the red states, gives a little bit of, chest pound for the ones that need it where we are weak. And unfortunately, it's dominated by those that they want that machismo, that Trump had. I think as long as he continues to do that, I think that we're going to get reelected in 2024. I will stress that, yes, we need to be positive, but we should also remain humble. We have to be modest and we have to be realistic, and we have to always keep in our mind the fact that, Twitter is so small. All this work that we do, it's a lot for us. But in the end, Fox News can run one thing for a week, and it will have more of an impact than everything that we've done for the last 6 months. So we need to be acutely aware of how thin this wire is, this thread that we're hanging by when it comes to the midterms, and we need to be very careful. And I think that we will. If we do that, let's end it on a positive note. If we all work together and we recognize that messaging for Florida needs to be different than the messaging for California, if we recognize those things and we work together and continue to do these big tent conversations where we're reaching out and we're trying to work together and we're trying to get all people in, not make it about ourselves, egos, or any of this stuff, but just to get these laws passed and help people and support this administration and support the candidates. I think that we can get it done, but please be, acutely aware. We're not out of the woods yet. It's still on fire, and there is a possibility that they could take it back. So we can't let down our guard for 1 minute. Thank you guys. Analisa, Stuart, John, Lori, thank you so much. Everybody at DemCast, so many of you jumped in here. I really appreciate that. If it needs to be said, of course, EverydayAmericanJoe.com is not affiliated with DemCast in any way. Our opinions are our own opinions as random U.S. citizens. We're not coordinating between each other. These are not, political action committees that are breaking any FEC rules. We're speaking as American citizens who are just concerned about each other, our families, and in our country. So thank you, everyone. We do have to cut it to a close, and I look forward to working and talking more with all of you. So goodbye, everybody, and you guys have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody. It was wonderful and inspiring to meet you all. And thank you, Chris, for making all of this happen.
Thank you, Chris. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye, guys.
Nice to meet everyone on here.
Easter, happy Passover.
Absolutely. And thank you all for making that happen.